Hi, I'm Mona Channet. This is Beyond Unboxed with BeScience, featuring a conversation from their Stepping into STEM podcast, going beyond the headlines to explore what's really driving the progress in STEM. Welcome to Stepping into STEM, everyone. I'm Mona Channet, and today we're thrilled to have a true trailblazer in the world of space and STEM with us, Katherine Courtney. She's worn many hats throughout her impressive career, has served as CEO at the UK Space Agency, chairs a steering board for the Global Network on Sustainability in Space. Katherine is also the founder of Primary Space, a charity that leverages the wonders of space, science, and technology to engage primary school teachers and children, perfectly encapsulating her commitment to innovation and inclusivity in STEM. On the International Women's Day, we're excited to dive into her journey discussing empowering women in STEM and explore the future of space innovation. Please join me in welcoming Katherine Courtney.
Welcome, Catherine. It is a fabulous and great honor to have you here because it's not often that I meet a rocket scientist.
Well, thank you, Mona, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to you. I will disabuse you of the notion that I'm a rocket scientist, but we can come on and talk about that later. I do work in space with a
I
lot of
do.
rocket scientists. Yeah.
Not often that I meet anyone who even touches it, otherwise just looking at it on the news or something like that. So it's one of my, let's say, bucket list. But before we go on, I'd like to do an icebreaker and ask you if you had a futuristic gadget that you would like to, let's say, invent, something to solve all the biggest challenges in space or STEM, what would it be and how would anyone use it?
Well, I my main role now is as an advocate and a facilitator trying to solve the problem of the increasing congestion in space. Because the space economy is growing so fast, we are very rapidly doing to the space environment what we have done to the oceans down here and what we've done to the terrestrial environment. So if I could invent a gadget, it would be a gadget that would allow for reuse and recycling of all of those man-made materials that we're putting up into space. And I can tell you there are startup companies trying to work on those things now. I just think we need to hurry up.
That was supposed to be an icebreaker, but that was pretty serious, which leads me to my question about how you started off with your career, because I understand that you've had a huge business portfolio career and that led you into the tech transformation initiatives in government, working with the UK Space Agency and so on. I mean, what came first?
Well, you make it sound like there was a plan. And I'll say that there was no plan. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my career or my life. I grew up in a very international environment. So I moved to Turkey at 2 months old. I've lived in 9 different countries, and that was 5 of those before the age of 14. I'd moved 10
Mhm.
times by the time I hit my teenage years. And all I really knew was that I was interested in international things, but I wasn't in an environment where I knew very many people who did interesting jobs in engineering or science or technology. So I had no exposure to that and really no opportunity to pursue that as a career. My father was a diplomat and my mother was a
Mhm.
businesswoman. So I didn't know that I was going to end up in technology. I sort of stumbled into it after my undergraduate studies, where I did modern languages and anthropology. I moved to Spain, and then I decided to do a master's in business administration. And I came to London to do that master's.
Mhm.
And that was an international management degree. So I needed a job, and I got a job with cable and wireless telecommunications. And that then led on to lots of opportunities that I grasped over the years
Mhm.
to work in international product development and business development, and moved on into a series of international startup companies who were doing very innovative things in telecommunications, nothing to do with space at all. And I moved from there to the government and led a number of very major tech transformation projects for the government. And the truth of the matter is that I just stumbled in a lucky way into space.
So it wasn't
It
planned.
wasn't planned at all. My boss rang me up one day and said, we, need the chief executive of the UK Space Agency is moving, and we need to appoint a successor. And I was taken aback because I didn't even know we had a space agency like a year before, and I knew nothing about the space sector. And I told him that I was going to have to think about it. And I went downstairs, and at the time I had a 6 year old and two 3 year olds, and a mother in law with dementia living in my house, and my own mother was terminally ill in another country. And it was not a great time to try a new adventure and a big challenge. But I said to my 6 year old, "Do you know the astronaut that you saw on TV? Well, mommy's boss just asked if I'd like to have a job working with that astronaut." And, "Oh, that sounds great, mommy," And I said, "Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm going to do it. I need to think about it." And he said, I quote, "Well, if you don't try it, how are you going to know if you like it? I think you should give it a go." And of course, as a parent, you can't just say that stuff to your kids. You have to walk the talk, right? And I've never looked back because the space sector is the most dynamic, fascinating, industry you could work in. I think, and I love every minute of what I do.
So has it, I know it's been sort of different for other women. So how do you see that current landscape for women in the space sector of STEM? Is there opportunity? Has it changed?
Mhm.
Have you seen change, or have you seen a very stagnant route? What is your experience?
I mean, having spent the better part of my career in tech and never as a technologist, I call myself the translation engine. I'm the
Mm,
person who helps the engineers talk to the marketeers, and the policymakers talk to the scientists, talk to the business leaders. And I guess that's where my anthropology and modern languages,
mm,
comes in. I do see and have seen throughout my career that the more senior you get, the more lonely you are in terms of being, the only woman in the room. In space, however, it's such a rapidly growing industry, and there's so much opportunity that there are huge opportunities for women not only to join straight out of school or straight out of university, but I think there's huge opportunities for women in career transition to take the skills that they've learned in other sectors and to bring them to space. And I think we have a problem really in all over the world with encouraging women in their STEM careers. But space is one of, I'm not saying that we have a great track record because there's still a lot of work to do on diversity and equity and inclusion in the
especially,
space
mm.
sector. A lot of work to do. But it is a sector where we need so many talents. There are huge opportunities to join and build career for yourself in space.
What advice could possibly give to any of the women out there, because it is a very much male dominated industry?
Yeah, I'd say there's a couple of thoughts that triggers. One is that we have an image problem in space because everybody thinks it's about rockets and astronauts.
Mm,
But actually, what space is all about is how you get from point A to point B. You probably look something up on your phone today. You probably went to an ATM machine at some point, in the near past. All of those things, the every time signal that every stock market in the world relies on to determine whether a trade happened a second before or after the market closed, every sat nav in every car, every satellite receiver in every pocket of every human being who has a smartphone, all of those things are connected to satellites. And those services and those technologies are all designed and built and operated from here on the ground by people who have never been to space and probably never will go. They never want to go. So it's not about rockets and billionaires and astronauts. It's about hundreds of thousands of people doing really interesting jobs all over the world things like weather forecasting and emergency services design and healthcare and all of those things are completely reliant on satellites. And most people don't realize that. They don't realize from the minute you leave your house to the minute you get to the shop or the school or your office, you've probably been in touch with 27 different satellites. You know,
Right.
you you take all of that data and infrastructure for granted. And yet, we need people to design those services, to develop the solutions for climate change by using satellite data to study what's going on down here in Earth, to create the policy frameworks and the laws so that actually we can continue to use space safely and sustainably. So there's kind of a job for everyone in space, is what I always say. And my biggest mentoring pieces of advice are probably, first of all, have a go. My 6 year old was right. Just if you see a job that you're interested in, put yourself forward. It's a classic evidence. This hasn't changed that much. That shows that women tend to feel that they have to meet every criteria on the job
Mhm.
specification in order to put themselves forward. And men don't feel that need. They just throw their hat in the ring and, see what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
So that's my first, piece of advice is have a go. Be bold. If you're interested and you're curious, put yourself forward. And then build a network. Definitely find other women, join the networks, talk to other women, share your experiences.
One question has been burning in my mind, and that is you're the chair of the Global Network on Sustainability in Space. What a cool acronym. I thought to myself, off record, who came up with that acronym?
I wish I could say that I had a hand in that from my marketing background, but actually, uh, the network was established in the late 2019, and it was with some funding from the research councils here in the UK. And I was asked to chair it. And so I had no involvement in the branding, but what I have had an involvement in was making the brand be true and authentic. And so I think that quite possibly the scientists who started the network had a view that they'd hold a few interesting workshops in, academic meeting rooms here and there around the UK. And I said, you can't call something the global network of sustainability in space and not really work hard to make it global. And
Yes.
so, over that time period from very end of 2019 to today, we've grown to over 1,100 members around the world who are all senior researchers, senior business leaders, and a smaller percentage of sort of policy decision makers. And we span across 45 different countries and hundreds of institutions, and we bring people together to try and get them to forge new international collaborative partnerships so that they can accelerate research, accelerate innovation, accelerate solutions to keep space safe and sustainable.
Integration and innovation and technology advancing. That means that everything in space becomes more cluttered because people have new technologies. Does that job also to involve having sustainability here on quote unquote Earth and then balancing it out in space? Like, how are you actually managing that?
It is a really big issue because the burning issue right now is let's just say the explosive, transformative, and enthusiastic growth of the space economy. So many commercial operators have gotten involved. So many private sector companies have been launched that in just the last few years alone, we've ended up with a situation where since the 1950s when the first satellite was launched, Sputnik, until today, it grew up until about the 2010. There were about 1,000 satellites, and most of them far away and in orbits that were far away, and all owned by governments in the main, or a few by telecommunications companies, all global. And then we had this massive explosion of very, very wealthy entrepreneurs who
Yes.
just decided to do something radical and different. And they have been launching thousands of satellites. We
Mhm.
now today have about, 10,000 satellites, active satellites, and a percentage of those at any point in time also being decommissioned or launching new ones. And the problem is there are no rules of the road for how we
Mhm.
share the space in space.
I see.
And unfortunately, up until recently, people haven't thought about sustainability. And so we have generated a lot of debris. Rockets were designed to be single use. So every rocket that launched that just stayed up there and slowly came back to Earth. Satellites were designed to work for a while and then slowly come back to Earth. Or the big ones that are farther away, they were designed to be, they realized, after, I don't know, after a couple decades that that was getting a little bit dangerous because once they stop working, they float out of their orbits and start bumping into each other. So they are designed to be pushed out into what's called a graveyard orbit, but actually that's becoming a junkyard orbit. Nobody predicted in the 1960s when the agreements for the Outer Space Treaty, et cetera, were being drafted, that there would be this much traffic in space. Just people couldn't
Mhm.
conceive of that. And so now we have this situation, which is completely unheard of. There's no global, there are global treaties, but there's no global space traffic management system. There's
Right.
just a lot of kind of voluntary guidelines and voluntary sharing of information and trying not to bump into each other. And that sort of works, sort of, but even now it's becoming increasingly more difficult for people to operate safely, even
Mhm.
now. And that's with just a tiny percentage of the plans that all these innovators have to put more and more and more things up there. And so it is really urgent that we find policy solutions and legal solutions that catch up with the speed of innovation in the industry. And that is really one of the key things that we try and do with our network is to accelerate progress in finding those solutions.
Accelerating the project, we find solutions. Have you seen opportunities in other areas of STEM that handshake with sustainability in space?
If you just think about all of the technology solutions and also, the science behind um, shipping, road management, rail, any travel and transport. And obviously, the closest analogy is how we manage airspace today. We have somehow managed to create a system where very large metal objects, largely running on autonomous systems, although there's always a human in the loop somewhere, are able to transport safely goods and people all over the globe, 24/7. And there very, very rarely things go wrong. I mean, there are risks, there are hazards, but they very rarely go wrong. We have the same challenge in space. And so we can definitely learn from the way solutions have been developed, cross-border international collaborative solutions where you standardize technologies, you create protocols for exchanging data, messages. You create communication systems that allow you to coordinate what you want to fly with what someone else wants to fly so that you don't bump into each other. It's the technologies are available. What is difficult is that space is by definition without borders. And so,
Mhm.
whereas you could do that on the ground by agreeing, this is my airspace, that's your airspace. Now we just need a bilateral kind of discussion about how we manage things coming through your airspace into mine and vice versa. In space, nobody owns the space in space. It's a global commons, as they say. And so it's much more difficult to figure out, okay, how do we make sure that we are not endangering each other, in
Mm.
what we want to do. And it's tricky, but people are starting to recognize even the front running innovators and entrepreneurs who, at the right now, 2/3 of the satellites in space belong to a single company that has a majority shareholder who is a single man. Well, he's not single all the time, but he's a single individual, right? And he is a move fast and break things kind of guy. And so we need to find mechanisms that allow everybody else to share the space in space safely.
What message do you have for the rest of the women? Because, National Women's Day it shouldn't just be just one day. It should be a lifetime. And then you've got Mother's Day, which should always be, as we all know, all year round, not just one day. What message or messages could you possibly give to all the women who maybe don't have that mentor affirmation to keep on going and to look forward to a brighter future to what they want to do in life?
There are certainly women who live in situations where they face multiple barriers and obstacles. But I suppose my advice and my life lesson, after decades of basically not knowing what I wanted to do, and so just trying new things, you know, is the advice that my 6-year-old gave me when I was offered the job at the space agency. Is just have a go.
Aw.
Have a go. You'll never know if you like it and you're good at it unless you try.
What out of the mouths of babes, as they say, are your children interested in going into any areas of science at this point?
Well, I have boy-girl twins who are 11 and a 14-year-old son as well. I would say that the younger boy really likes space a lot, but it's not so much that I think they want to follow in my footsteps. They just think that space is cool.
Yeah.
And so that is actually coming back to why I started primary space. Most children think space is cool. They just can't imagine, well, what could my future be in space? But they can imagine from the age of 4 all kinds of weird and wonderful futures. I'm going to be a cyborg. I'm going to be an artist. I'm going to be a sports star, whatever. So if you can just hang on to that enthusiasm and interest that space is cool, but also show them, oh, well, there's probably a future for you in space. Then I think we will change what the space workforce looks like in the future.
Well, that's absolutely inspiring. With that said, it's been really a pleasure to have you, Catherine, and I've learned so much about your journey and really the value of sustainability in space. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mona.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for sharing your incredible insights and journey with us today. Your work in transforming the space industry, fostering sustainability, and empowering the next generation of STEM leaders is truly inspiring. As we celebrate the International Women's Day, your story will continuously remind us of the power of innovation, determination, collaboration in breaking barriers and creating opportunities. To our listeners, I hope you leave today feeling inspired, motivated to challenge the status quo and explore the new frontiers of STEM. Thank you again, Catherine, for your time and wisdom. We look forward to seeing you where your vision and passion take you. Until next time, keep on reaching for the stars. That was Beyond Unboxed with BeScience, a conversation from stepping into STEM. I'm Mona Shanae.